everyone. Welcome to our first open masterclass of the Chamber Music Northwest season. My name is Subin Kim. I'm one of the artistic directors of Chamber Music Northwest. And today we're very, very happy to welcome violist Milena Pajaro-van de Stadt for this viola class today. Milena has a very close relationship with Chamber Music Northwest over the last 10 years or so because she was one of the founding members of the Dover Quartet. The Dover Quartet were proteges here at Chamber Music Northwest, I believe, in 2014?
13.
What year was Banff year?
13.
So they were protege artists here in the summer of 2013, just before they went on to take every prize possible at the Banff International Competition, and then they went on ever since to have one of the greatest quartet careers in the world. Milena retired from the quartet, graduated, I'll say, from the quartet a few years ago and has since gone on to become the hottest free Asian violist in the world. And so she's doing all kinds of different projects, solo chamber music. She has a new group with one of my teachers, Jamie Laredo, violinist, called Espressivo, a piano quartet. And on top of all of this, I've always known for many years she's going to be one of the great teachers in the world, which is why we have her today. So please welcome Milena Pajaro-van de Stadt.
Beautiful. I'm going to come up onto the stage and use that stage. Alrighty. So my first reaction to this, the fact that it's a concerto, even though you're just playing it with piano, have you played in an orchestra before?
I played it
In an orchestra? Okay, so in general, do you find the orchestra to be ahead or behind the conductor? Like the conductor gives a beat. Behind, right? So in general, when you're playing a concerto, you can allow yourself to feel that sense of space. Because that is, I mean, this is written for viola orchestra, right? In general, I felt that there were a lot of moments you kind of played through instead of just living in the actual moment of what was happening. Another thing about it being a concerto is the projection, the attitude of playing a solo, playing a concerto like that is so different from if you were playing, let's say, like solo Bach, right? And this reminds me of something I learned. Did you ever have to take Zoom lessons? Yeah, I know, it's the worst. But something I learned doing Zoom lessons, or teaching Zoom lessons, is that it's almost impossible to really tell exactly how loud or soft someone's playing over the microphone, but you can tell what it feels like. And a concerto is such a great opportunity for that kind of consideration, right? Because you always want to be projecting, but you want it to feel like it's soft and it's loud and all those types of things in between. So let's see. Why don't we start at the beginning? And do you remember what the dynamics are of the opening?
I think is it mezzo piano?
And then
It's like a step-by-step crescendo to a forte, so
Yeah.
there's a mezzo forte.
yeah, okay, cool. See how specific you can be. fact that you're not feeling the way you feel because of what's happening exactly in that moment, but rather, usually, you're feeling that way because of how it relates to what just happened, right? Because there's like really this experience over the course of time. And this is a very fancy way for me to say, every little shape you make in the bow affects what it feels like later, right? So, for instance, if you do a big hairpin throughout the crescendo, it takes away that feeling of the inevitable crescendo growing. Does that make sense? My favorite example of this kind of a phenomenon, because actually I think so much of it is psychological. Like you feel yourself do a hairpin and it's like, oops, oh well, I guess I'm just gonna have to go from there now, as opposed to whatever story you're trying to tell, allowing yourself to react to what's happening exactly in the moment. So my silly little example that I like to give is if I'm playing this, right, and then I accidentally use too much bow on a pickup, sounds like an accent, right? But if I'm really feeling in the moment of what's happening, all I have to do is, if I did a false accent, I play the next one even more, and it just felt like a crescendo instead of a false accent, right? So that kind of thing, did you notice throughout this phrase, like are there places where you felt a little bit bumpy, or like you weren't in the dynamic you wished you had been? Yeah. Do you have a specific place?
Probably when I went to the
Did you feel like you were too soft here? Yeah. So one thing that I'm noticing with your bow is that usually with string players, we end up having one of two habits, neither of which are great. The more common one is always speeding the bow up, which creates swells, basically. You have more that type of habit, right? So the reason you feel like you're maybe not strong enough by this point in the crescendo is because the note right before had a swell, and it decayed at the end, right? And the other habit, which maybe is a little healthier but also not great, is when someone always slows the bow down, right? So if you're always speeding it up, I think the reason we get this habit is because when we're just learning the instrument and how to use the bow, we're taught to really try to learn how to use the whole bow, right? And so happen, right? The other habit is to always slow the bow down, which means you get accents everywhere. So what I would practice is that seeing how much of a straight tone you can get. Let's see. That way, if you're actually wanting a crescendo, all you have to do in that moment is just think, more bow. Whatever bow I'm using here, I use more. Whatever bow I'm using, maybe change the sound point, rather than having to fight against the habits. Make sense? So let's see, why don't we start, let's do the beginning again. And see if you can live in the moment of what's happening, right? So really pay attention to whether you're letting the bow decay when there isn't a hairpin down, and see if you can realize that and not do it. Try that. How much softer it was? Literally just the difference of how much bow you used here compared to there, right? So if you wanted to sound the same dynamic, literally just do the exact same thing you were doing with the bow before. Actually, this reminds me of another anecdote. My quartet was once having a coaching with a cellist, and we were playing Raveh quartet, and the opening of the piece starts with a F major scale in the cello part, and the coach demonstrated something, and we were like, how was it so smooth? Like, we did not hear a bow change at all. And he was like, well, the way that I get a smooth bow change is I move the bow in one direction, and then I change direction, right? But that's the beauty of it, right? Is that he only changed direction, which meant that whatever type of pressure and speed he was using at one end of the bow was that matched the same, right? Let's see. I'm being like super picky now. Also, what will help with the shape is the way that you're using your vibrato, right? Because when the vibrato stops, it changes the effect of that note, right? And then in the context, it feels like maybe suddenly it's very dead or much more calm and not part of that same crescendo. You want to just start right where you come in? Oh, okay, see. So remember the thing I said about that? So what would be the stronger note out of the two first notes you're playing?
The second one.
The second one, yeah. And because you have such a longer note, you're trying to save bow, right? So actually, you don't necessarily need so much bow for the pickup. Actually that difficult, right? I feel like when we overthink it, that's when we start doing all those hairpins. So that was really smooth. And then in order to make it feel even louder, like this goes back to the thing I was saying about Zoom, like all that needs to happen is something has to have developed. Something has to change. It doesn't necessarily, because some people do a crescendo and you feel like you've maxed out and there's nowhere left to go. Or diminuendo and you're like, I can't play any softer, so I guess I'm stuck here, like that kind of feeling. All you have to do is change something. So the way you were playing that bar 7, you had a really steady, kind of slow in the string bow. So in order for it to feel like it developed, you could have, for that B, when you go up high, use more bow and had the sound have more air in it, maybe, so it's more lively. And if you had been doing the opposite, like if you had more of a, then that difference would work. But with this, right, literally just the fact that it's different is what makes you feel, it's like what I was saying with music, is how it feels the way it does because of how it relates over the course of time. It's just that which should be so liberating, because if you're really tuned into what you're doing, when you're doing a slow bow, if you want it to feel louder, do a faster bow. Or if you're doing a slow bow and you want it to feel softer, you can use a faster bow, right, with less pressure, and vice versa. If you want it to feel softer and you're using a really airy bow, you could slow the bow down, right? So it's really just about how things are changing from moment to moment. Cool. Let's do it again, same place. Try also, are you vibrating the first note?
No.
Okay, so however much vibrato you use in the first note, is leaving a little bit more of the second note. I'm being so annoying now. This is kind of what's happening. Right, your bow kind of stops and then you start with a different speed and different pressure on that second note. I think it's psychological. I think it's like trying to be really careful and have it like, please sound pretty, kind of relate to that. I feel that a lot. Usually when I'm unsatisfied with something that's happening when I'm playing, I realize that it's because I'm like trying to, like, please sound pretty here, please sound magical, instead of just literally thinking like, however much bow I use on this note, I use more on this, however much vibrato. Right, just those things that you actually very clearly know how to do, vibrate, play the right notes, play the right rhythms, make a nice sound. And instead of getting too in your head about like how perfect it is, just literally do the things you know how to do, and then it's easier and it sounds more beautiful. You try that, just vibrate, little bow, vibrate more bow. Ooh, okay, it already sounded less difficult somehow. It felt more like you're just playing And then as you listen, like we're talking about over the course of time, you'll be able to figure out in which direction to change your sound based on the phrase you're trying to make. Right? All right, let's do it again. All right, so this time, do you know what you did with the A, with your bow?
Just slow down.
It's sped up, so it sounded like this. Which, speeding up is fine, right? But then all you need to do is have this match it on the next one, right? So I guess you're right. You slowed down, but on the change, which is why it sounded like that. Try not speeding it up so much on the first. I think that'll help you. Of that kind of like constant hairpin thing. And one of the dangers of that habit of having a lot of hairpins is that then the general like map of the piece, the topography, the shape of it, actually ends up feeling a lot more the same, because the whole time you're having a lot of this as opposed to letting yourself live in this area and then live up here, and really like each section it hangs together more. Okay, here's another example of, actually, I don't know how to do that. I want to make sure I'm like staying on top of things. I don't know where she is.
You got 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay, great, thank you. Sorry, I know I said to tell me when there were 3 that I'm looking at. All right, so there are 2 places that I want to point out in particular in this piece that are such a great example of living in the moment of what's happening with the music. And so basically we're always, especially as an audience who's hearing a piece for the first time, we're always expecting what we already know. So actually the place I really wanted to talk about is right here. That part. So we hear those 3 little cells, that one tiny little phrase. Right? Then you start again, but it doesn't go up. So if you're the audience, you're expecting, or if I'm going to get really particular about it, I would say, we only know that figure. So when it goes, that's meaningful, right? Going up. Then this one didn't go up. So we're like, okay, now I get the pattern. Now it's going to be, or something, right? But then this time we have that kind of what we expect, but more painful. And then what you're not expecting, and it goes all the way. It's so cool and so satisfying, and it felt kind of normal the way you're playing it, right? Also, I don't know if you remember this, but I think there are different dynamics here, 40 piano, which should help too. Could you try that? Try, like, imagine like because I know you know how a piece goes, but imagine like you're expecting what we all would expect. So whenever you play this second part of it, don't expect the note to be the same. Be surprised when it is, right? Expect and react to that in the sound. You play that, just measure 38. help yourself with that crescendo, doing what you're doing with your bow, also with the vibrato. Getting it more, 2 minutes, oh, thank you. Getting it more exciting. Could you do an experiment with me? Could you try doing every single one with the same bowing? I think that will help it feel like you're always kind of expecting the same thing, but every time he changes something in a really emotional way. Direction, and I would take that kind of idea and do it everywhere. Always think, what would someone hearing it for the first time really expect to be happening, and have yourself really try to expect that yourself. The other place is actually near the beginning that's similar to that is right, so you hear these first two, probably can expect something like that, right? Just kind of the same thing going, but you don't even get to sit on the second note of that third little pair of notes. It goes all the way. So you have a pair, and a really long arc at the top. Can you try that one? Now try this bowing. Great. Now play it where kind of how we're expecting. Just do this. Expect that and start again and do actually what's written. Yeah, it like gives you this extra excitement, right? All right, I think we're out of time, but you sound beautiful. Thank you. Bravo. similar things to say. So, in general, the habit with your bow, is to make a lot of hairpins, and the reason that that's happening is just because of the speed. It's basically going slow, fast, slow with the bow. A lot of the time that's because we're trying to like get to a specific part of the bow and things like that. And I think that that's just a psychological block, right? That we can just kind of, if you're just living in the moment of what's happening with the music, it shouldn't even really be stressful, right? So, for example, in the opening, just pianissimo with no hairpins or markings or anything, if you just use the same type of bow speed the whole time, it'll give it such a serene quality. I think that's also one of the psychological things that we try to make things pretty and get in our own way by overcomplicating things. Try it just very simply. You're doing up, over, down. That calm, so that when you actually have, because the point of this is how specific can you be with the markings? Because he writes enough stuff in here that if you just literally did it, the piece would come to life without you having to try too much, right? Like you can just do nothing here, and as pianissimo, you can speed the bow up and then slow it down over those 5 beats, and then you have a beautiful hairpin, right? Can you try that? Just being really like technically literal about what the markings are, and if you want, you can get it. Okay, so already I really love the effect of the opening. Like you actually didn't have to. How did it feel to play it? I'm just curious.
Sounds kind of like wispy.
Wispy. Did it feel stressful?
No, it doesn't feel stressful, but I worry that the audience
Can't hear it? Okay. Could you guys hear it? Yeah? Oh, awesome. Yeah, I mean, she's being really sensitive. But that's an interesting thought. And if you're feeling that, and you still want it to be calm, you could just be a little bit more. All I'm asking is that you don't do all the hairpins you were doing, right? Right? And you can just literally, like, this is the thing I find that the longer we play our instruments and the more advanced we get, the more difficult we make it for ourselves. Because it's almost like I've been there, I'm like, well, I should be thinking about abstract things, like it's mysterious, or I don't know, it's noble, it's angry, and then I'm like, well, how do you actually get that to come out, right? It's like speaking a language. Like if you've taken other languages, so when you're learning a different language, and you don't speak it fluently, right? In order to communicate with someone who speaks that language, you literally have to just memorize a series of sounds in the right order and then say them, right? And then it actually is very meaningful to someone who speaks a language because you're saying the correct words, right? So it's a similar thing here. If with our instruments, we're not literally pronouncing like, oh, this is pianissimo with no hairpins. We're not actually saying that. It's like if I want to try to tell you like I love my dog, which I do, but I don't speak English, and I'm not going to try to like memorize the words, I love my dog. It's more meaningful if I look at you and say, I love my dog, without trying to make it emotional, than it is if I say, right? It's like, I'm showing you all the feeling about what I mean, but it's not coming out, right? And I think it makes it so much easier because all the stuff I'm saying like sounds so methodical and almost like you're taking the emotion out of it, but actually it's just like, how do I focus on just pronouncing exactly what's there? So I got into this tangent because when you got to this top of the hairpin, you did a hairpin within the hairpin, and so we lost that shape of that that was the top, I would literally think less bow, more, most, and then a little less. Right? If you're just thinking that literal about how you're using your, that literally about how you're using your bow, then that effect, that hairpin will be exactly that, as opposed to like that kind of thing.
Okay.
And you do it again from the opening, and just for experimentation, be a little more, but keep it even. Keep sustaining it. Yeah, it feels like you're a little. Are you worried about running out of bow?
I can just save it more.
Yeah, I don't think you should be. I don't even know if you have to save it because I don't think you used the whole bow, but it felt like you were worried about running out of bow. Let's see.
Should I try just like right on?
Let's try it from this bar. So we're gonna do
The
fifth
fifth.
bar. Yeah. Did you feel like you were really trying to save?
No.
Yeah, it didn't look like you had enough bow. This is another thing. I feel like it's okay to just look at your bow and be like, oh, actually, I've got enough left. Like, it seems like you're not coming out of the music. You're just doing the thing we're talking about. You're just pronouncing it. You're saying the right words, right? So, like, I'll be in a concert and have a really long last note. And instead of just being like, well, I hope I have enough bow, I'll literally just look at my bow. And then you can also gauge how fast or slow you need to go. You're just looking at it. So, there, I was looking at your bow, and you definitely had enough. That sounded great. Okay, let's go from
Good measure.
the third measure. Yeah. So good, so good. So, are you seeing this as? It looks like you're seeing it as pseudo. Is this your music? The marking. This time it actually felt pseudo. When you played through, it felt like you did kind of.
It's like a very slow fade.
Yeah, you faded into it, and I didn't get that sensation of like, this is pianissimo here, right? And then here's another, something I said earlier, but since you weren't here, the cool thing about music is that you're not feeling what's happening, you're not feeling that way because of literally what's happening in that moment. It's more about how it relates to what just happened, right? And that actually is really
You
liberating.
mean like it's relative?
Yeah, it's contextual.
Yeah.
It's like any kind of art, right? Like if you looked at a painting right now, it might make you feel a certain way, and then 30 years from now, if you look at the same painting, because of the context of your life and where you are at that moment, it may make you feel differently, right? So, doesn't really matter exactly what type of sound you're making here. I feel bad saying that. It matters. It matters that you're saying something meaningful. But if you're, let's say you're using a very clear, pure sound here, just not using a clear, pure sound on the next note will make it feel like a pseudo, different, magical change, right? Or, for instance, if you're going that kind of a sound, then a more dense sound still gives you the effect of this pianissimo because now it's more still, it's less floaty, right? And that's also a sign of good music, right? Where it can be interpreted in those different ways, and so long as you're telling the story in the right order, basically, it's without needing to obsess over, well, I was planning on playing this with a clear sound and this with a fuzzy sound, but I wound up in the moment all fuzzy here, and I guess I'm just trapped and I can't do anything. No, actually, it's really nice and calming, because all you have to do is just, oh, interesting, I'm doing this right now, so I'll do something different next. Okay. Let's do the same thing. See, that note's not hard. It's not so long. It sounds beautiful. You didn't even, like, you're kind of using the whole bow. You're not forcing it. Great. All right, so let's do the whole thing again. And don't worry about what exactly you're doing here. Just pay attention to it so that you can do something distinctly different. What just happened this time, you were really clear and then you went fuzzy, and that kind of worked perfectly because the piano sound was pure and clear, so that it felt like she had a response to what you had just said before. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Ooh, okay, can we go to the poco animato section? Where's that? I don't see bar numbers. You know where it is. Okay, so you're seeing this now dynamically.
And you come down that much and you can call.
Well, oh yeah, but I mean, I'm not even thinking about that now. I'm just thinking about what's happening exactly what you did just now. And you did come down a lot, but you only stayed piano for like one beat. Right? And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at least. A fun trick is where you see the hairpin or the crescendo is to kind of make sure that, if anything, you've gone softer by that point where you see it. If anything. Like, you don't need to have gone softer, but you definitely don't want to have gotten louder by that point, right? And it can't, if you do come down a little bit, it makes for an even more exciting crescendo. And that crescendo is only 2 beats long, so it's really fast, kind of sudden. It's like a subito hairpin or something like that. Let's do that again. That same feeling of like, I'm not going to have enough bow, or I'm not going to get the shift or something. There's some kind of like, I'm getting a little stress.
Oh.
Are you not feeling stressed?
No.
Oh, good. That's good.
I'm sorry, maybe you feel that.
No, it just, and the reason it's feeling that is that these 4 notes, those 16th notes, they each have dashes on them,
And I'm counting
right?
point.
And it's going through so much that I'm like, oh no, she's worried about the top, like getting to the top or something. And there's only 2 of you playing, so it's not that tricky to like keep the ensemble together. So you don't need to worry about being like perfectly on time like that. I would actually do the thing of like, what finger are you doing for that? I would just actually think, looking at your hand, making sure each note is vibrated, because then it kind of forces you to have a little bit of importance on each note. Then we can hear hear all 4 of those notes, as opposed to, it kind of felt like that. But I'm really glad to hear you weren't stressed, and I'm sorry for having this. I thought you were. Let's start at the same place. To wait a little bit on the A. Interesting. Can we just go from the 6th bar of it? Yeah. Into what I was saying about how if something sounds different, you feel the development of that section. So if you have a hairpin, but you don't want to have changed all the way to forte yet, actually there's no dynamic here, but oh no, wait, yeah, there's no dynamic. But she's got the tune, right? And she's in forte, so you might be a little less than that. Is to do a hairpin more with color than necessarily with dynamic. With vibrato or with the type of bow use, right? Like if in the middle of that hairpin you use more bow instead of just getting deeper in the string, then you can save the deep in the string sound for there. Right. Yeah, for when it's actually forte. And now, because I'm thinking about it, there was a place, it might have been here. There was a place where you had forte and then fortissimo. The fortissimo felt less than the forte.
Oh, okay.
It might have been that. But yeah, I would just not ever let yourself get trapped by what you're expecting to be doing with the bow, right? Like if you're using a lot more bow than normal on a forte, then like I would really dig in on the fortissimo and vice versa. It's like when you did I already say this? You're trying to get louder, you say you have a crescendo and you feel like you've maxed out. Has this happened to you before? And you're supposed to keep going, yeah, and sometimes people will like calm back down, and if it's really obvious, then it just feels like something new in the music as opposed to a continuation of that crescendo. The trick would be to just literally change what you're doing and it feels more intense, and it actually doesn't matter that much. Like you will probably find what your instinct is, and that will make it more natural. But if you're trying to get louder and louder, you're really digging into the string and you feel like you've maxed out, then use way more bow and actually less pressure, and then there's much more. It won't literally be a higher decibel level, but it'll feel like there's more energy. And the opposite's true. If you're using a lot of bow, playing as loud as you can, you feel like you can't play any louder, then slow the bow down, get in the string, and that adds intensity because of how distinctly different it is without needing to sacrifice the volume or do that like kind of like weird dip that we do.
Yep.
Well, you know what, in that case, maybe we just go right from that D flat there.
About 3 minutes.
Thank you. Fortissimo here, and then there's nothing. I think it doesn't hurt to be as literal as possible with what the markings are until it feels unnatural, and then kind of find the way that is natural. But if there's no dim, I would try not to do a dim.
Okay.
I would keep the sound spinning, and even though you're left all alone, to me, the magic of this part here, you're fortissimo, she stops playing, you're still alone, and then in the next bar of your aloneness, there's a dim. It's like you realize that you were alone, right?
Yeah.
It's like very emotional. Try that. Just go right on the largamente and don't stop playing fortissimo until the second beat of this bar. That feels more emotional to me. You're like spinning out of control and like, oh my gosh, I'm all alone now. And the fact that the rhythm changes there to the big broad triplets, it's like, oh, I just noticed. Yeah. Cool. Bravo.
Well, thank you so much.
end that you can't sustain. I'm like wondering whether there's, because obviously it's for orchestra, I'm assuming that strings are holding that chord at the bottom. If there's like a sneaky way you could yeah, I don't know, like play the note again really quietly while she's changing bow or something, so that you can like keep hearing it throughout. I don't know what I did. Is that great. Okay, so I have a couple thoughts. The first one actually maybe just work out of order, if that's okay with you. The cadenza. So the thing about a cadenza is it's like this moment where you're kind of thinking about everything that's happened, and it's putting you in different directions, right? So it's really like every moment is leading to the next one in a way, right? Or everything that you do is a reaction to what just happened. And I felt like it felt like you knew how it went, if that makes sense. It didn't feel like you were exploring and finding your own way through it, like almost like you're writing it yourself as you're playing. Didn't feel like that. For example, is that notes? When you have it again, right? It felt so normal to go on, but it's not, right? Because we only heard that, so we're expecting that. We heard that figure again, and then it changed, right? Those types of things where like every moment you're just like, oh, this is where it's taking me now. And on the same line, that's why I thought maybe you could try to find a way to already get onto the A string. Are those the right notes? So it's not tuned, right? That felt like it didn't actually come out of the thing before. It was like, okay, now we're back into the tutti or the main section. Just try maybe from like 2 before the cadenza, the G. Experiment with this. Let's try to be really, okay, you're mezzo forte here, right? I'm not sure, let's just try really having everything, let's see how I'm gonna put this. Try not ever knowing what happens next, right? So just don't play. So if you're, let's see, this is mezzo forte. Still within the same character, right? Sorry. Right, the reason that this happens is because you're thinking about what this just was. It's like you're ruminating on that little thing. Like, yeah, those are the notes. Those are the 5 notes I'm obsessed with all of a sudden, right? As opposed to, right, where it feels like it's something different. It's actually just the exact same thing, but you become a little obsessed with it, right? And which is why I wouldn't get super soft here. Actually, I might have to save it for that. I save it, because then it's like the same thing happened now with this new material. Then, like, I wonder what. Right, like, what did that mean? You say that thing again, and then, oh, it turns into this new thing, right? Okay, let's do the same place again. that, because actually, you be really literal and not have the mood change yet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like have it feel like you're kind of stuck in a weird loop. You don't know. We don't know it's the cadenza yet.
Okay, yeah.
Rest. Like, okay, the first surprise is that you stop playing.
Yeah.
Right? So to react to that surprise would be like, oh, I stopped playing. What was it I just said again? It was that thing. And let's see. Are those quintuplets? Okay, so it feels like 2 and 3. Instead of like that's kind of more even. Because he does write, this is his cadenza, yeah, does write different rhythms within the cadenza, right? That's another thing, is like to get that sensation of when they're faster and slower rhythms, the proportionality actually does kind of matter, right? Let's do the same place again. Cool. I like it. Did it feel like I was stopping you? Is that why you stopped?
I didn't know.
Well, I'm glad you stopped because I just noticed this rhythm also, right? Right, that's a little bit, it looks like it's written a little bit slower. Yeah. So maybe that's another place of like, ooh, something new is happening here. Could you just humor me and start this ever so slightly slower, so it's more reminiscent of this. So it really feels like you're reacting to what you just played. Same place. Contrived to you because I had told you to do it, but I thought that was great. It really made us aware of what the cadenza came from, like what was the motive that started it all. And then the way that you paused here, awesome. I think it would be cool if you didn't do too much hairpin here. So if you're like not let it get too woken up yet, like still thinking about what just happened. And then my biggest thing is when you get to that G where we're expecting you to stop.
Yeah.
We really think it's gonna be this again, but an echo. That you actually allow that to turn the corner. It feels kind of normal right now. It feels like, like of course we're gonna go turn around. Go the other way now. How about we just go from just that top, the E. Yeah. so I like the way that it's thinking about what just happened, but the moment you change directions, it was like, of course this is normal.
Oh,
Even though you sat on the G, right? And the reason is I felt a lot of energy, right? It was like immediately louder. Like, it's a cadenza too. Like, I wouldn't be scared to just, really mess with us and yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. That's so good. That was yeah. I would do that for like the whole cadenza. Just be like, I'm literally making this up. So nothing makes so much sense right away like that. It makes sense as it's happening. So,
Yeah.
oh, that was so good. We'll do it again. Try that last one.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah. On the last one, I just stay in first position. Yeah, and then who doesn't love a nice little slide? Right. All right. Let's start wherever you like. Maybe down here somewhere. Or you can do the same place again. Since you're trying to do a new fingering on the spot in front of a bunch of people, is the fact that he wrote up to there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That you can really take advantage of that. Let's see here, because your crescendo doesn't even necessarily say to get faster, but it does feel like it's kind of spinning out of control. It makes musical sense. Maybe from the moment you see that, you can actually like just really put the brakes on.
Yeah.
Makes the fingering easier. Sounds musical. Win-win. Yeah, that's nice. That, and then now I'm not going to make you do it a millionth time, but in the same idea, every time this thing starts in a new place is also a moment of, because we have the interesting. It's so small, and then goes a little farther, and then you don't go all the way back down to the. That could also be where you start to remember what sound you had at each stage in the scale. So if you're, whatever that was, that almost feels like you're like literally grabbing onto that and repeating it and then taking it somewhere new. Okay, great. I want to get a little bit of the beginning of the movement. My biggest reaction to the opening material was that the vibrato felt kind of random. And it really, really helps. Like, it's just one of those things, it's such a small difference, but it's just small physical difference, but it makes huge musical difference and emotional difference. So, like, for example, not vibrating the downbeat there didn't seem on purpose, right? It didn't feel like you're just choosing to have not. It felt random.
Mm-hmm.
And having a little vibrato on that downbeat, to me feels more emotional.
Yeah.
How about just 2 before she comes in? I'm glad you did that because it reminded me of something else I want to say. I'm just curious why there's such a big rest there.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you want to do a retake, well, this is, I think this is a psychological block that we have. Like, retake doesn't actually take so long. It's kind of like when we have to shift to a really high note. It feels so far away because the pitches sound really different. But like if you didn't have your instrument there, you can move your hand 3 inches, right? So it's kind of a similar thing with the bow. Like, it doesn't actually take very long to go like that. But for some reason, it feels like I'm going from a down bow to another down bow. It must take a long time. I would let yourself play the entire half note before you move on to the next downbeat,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So the downbeat is on the beat.
So the downbeat's, yeah, it's on the beat, but you know, I would not sacrifice the. Sorry, I'm not doing the bowing here. Because that's the end of that part of the phrase, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you cut it off so short, it feels like not only you kind of giving away the next thing, but we didn't get to enjoy what those first 4 bars meant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's just see, please. There are a lot of solutions to that. You could, and then maybe this part of the phrase is a little softer, so, and you can hook that in. Another option would be, right?
Yeah.
There's always something like really subtle you can do to not get in the way of like how you want to phrase it. Because to me, it does sound funny when that note stops. It's such a pensive harmony too. That so have like an actual stop.
Yeah.
Feels unnatural. Let's do it again. Yeah, to me, already like it more.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the downbeat is a little soon emotionally, like based on like this, because everything stops there. Yeah, it feels too expected. Yeah. Thank you. Short note. At least, right?
Yeah.
It felt like, I'm saying like one, it felt like a dotted quarter note or something, or maybe even like a quarter note. It doesn't need to be an unnatural kind of sustaining, right?
Yeah.
Just or existing in that note for an entire half note. Okay. Oh, we only have 1 minute. Let's do it again. We only have a minute. So in general, to me, is the specific different characters aren't unique enough from one another. And another thing I've been talking about a lot today, which is that, because obviously when a piece is this hard, you probably practice it a lot, and you come up with ideas that you want to do and have plans and all that kind of stuff, right? So you probably plan to do certain types of colors and stuff like that. What happens is when you're performing it live, you might end up not doing exactly what you planned, and then what happens is if you try to stick to that, you're kind of trapped. Instead of letting yourself react to what's happening, what you did do, which is, I mean, probably played chamber music. Yeah, which is like one of the great things about chamber music, right? Because you can't actually control what other people around you are doing. That's a wonderful thing. Because then you have to just react in the moment, and it keeps the music alive, right? So there were a lot of places in this where I felt like you had an idea of how you wanted to play that, but it ended up not being any different from the thing before, maybe because you had done that same color just then, right? So why don't we start with this movement? Yeah. Let me just go right on the third movement. Okay, so I'm curious, what do you know what the marking is? Poco forte. Yeah, so there's something about this energy that for me is feeling like fortissimo. And I'm not saying that you're playing too loud, because it's a concerto also, so if you're in an orchestra, you would really want to be projecting, but there's something in the character that feels like really intense instead of what, looking at it on the page, it looks more playful. So, yeah, think about that character and just let it sink in, and let's try this whole thing is kind of, I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, it is, there is something playful about it. The way that he's having you jump up octaves and trills. I mean, trills are, especially in this context, trills are hard to be like too menacing, kind of, ooh. So I would have a little more fun with it. And let's see. Oh, this is just a really technical thing that's happening. A lot of the time when you have the last note of something and then a rest, the last note ends up being slightly accented or longer. And one example would be, and then all those ones you don't accent, but for some reason you do that one, right? And I think it's just because you have a rest in the next downbeat. All right, let's do it again. Like it feels like, of course I'm just going to play for one beat, right? But actually we should be expecting you, and you should kind of be expecting yourself to play more, but it's like you, right? To have more of that type of like, I don't know, in the moment surprises everywhere. You want to just do, you just go from like 29 or 2 before, like, whatever makes sense for you. You should know when. What might help is that, just another one of those places where because it's the last note, it ends up being a little longer. And so it almost sounds like, so, oh, Beethoven. So it almost feels like that is a downbeat instead of, like, I would almost practice it like a, and then carbon copy but without the downbeat, so it doesn't feel settled. See? So this first iteration where you started is mezzo piano, and the next one is mezzo forte, and then you have poco forte, and then forte with dash 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 crescendo to fortissimo, right? So right now most of it feels kind of the same. I don't know if you were here earlier, but I was talking about having to. Do you ever do Zoom lessons ever? Yeah. Ugh, not great. But one thing I really learned about when I was doing lots and lots of Zoom teaching was that decibel level almost doesn't really matter, especially like think about it, when you're playing a concerto, you're going to be wanting to project a lot. It matters more how it feels than what the literal volume is. Like obviously the volume will have to do with that, but it's a little more subtle. And so when someone would play for me over Zoom, I couldn't tell if they were playing really loud or really soft. I would just be like, "Ooh, it feels like it's too loud here." And they said, "Well, I'm playing as soft as I can." Like, well, it feels loud, right? So it's like a character thing. So is there a way to get this, even if you want to be heard there, to feel mezzo piano, and then to feel mezzo forte? One easy way to do that is whatever type of bow you're using on the mezzo piano, you don't do that on the mezzo forte. You do something different, right? Distinctly different. And then the poco forte, how is that going to be different? Then when you get to these, right on the half bar is where the forte is, right? It's not actually a crescendo, and it's really cool because it's exactly where you jump. Forte, and then with each of those dashes, those things, I would just think lot of bow, lot of bow, lot of bow on each of the first of the four notes. All right, let's do it again. Yeah, already felt a lot more descriptive. So I would go in that direction with this movement in general. Here's an example after 60. That felt pretty intense. Didn't feel like mezzo piano. Not gonna sit here and say you play too loudly, but it felt loud, right? That was a place. Excuse me. Nice job with those. That's not easy. Okay. I think I wanna. That's my general gist in the third movement. It's like how can you be really, because it feels like a lot of the same stuff, but it's always there's some little detail that's different. So we'll try to actually before we move on. Can we try this place one more time? Before I was going to go back to the second movement, but before we move on, one thing that will help these characters not bleed into each other is avoiding lots of hairpins, right? Because if you're starting mezzo piano in the section and then you do hairpins, that kind of takes you out of the mezzo piano. Then you're mezzo forte and you do hairpins, and it kind of feels like the mezzo piano did before. You could try to really be strict with yourself and have this be in one place, and then in the next place. Maybe this time you try it. Have a more fun stroke on the mezzo piano. Be a little bit more serious, so we feel this like jump up, but keep it sustained, the same feeling. And then when you get to the poco forte, you try to use more bow, like you were at the opening, right? It's the same marking. Try doing that there, and being really specific about it, and just keeping it so that when you have, you can actually change exactly on that half bar. Yeah, this is gonna be the last time I do this part. Yeah, that was cool. That was great. I like to think it's more fun to play it that way too, where you get to like really kind of mess with us. We're like living in this place, and suddenly it's like, I don't know if you saw me do this, like suddenly the dial is turned up and you're here, right? Okay, cool. So that's the kind of thing I would do for this movement. Let's go back to the slow movement. So this movement, I felt like I guess it's a similar thing where each character wasn't really unique. And in the case of the slow movement, it kind of reminds me of the first movement where you have these really beautiful motives, but they're always either in a different key or a drastically different register, and it means something completely different. So like the feeling of this like semplice at the opening, really serene. And then the very next iteration of the same thing is mezzo forte and starts on the C string. Like that feeling of really, like this, it's a viola concerto, so I would say like this is a moment to be like, oh yeah, this is a viola, I'm playing viola. So yeah, let's start this movement again. Doing a crescendo there is kind of backwards, like through that D. What if, because we have, we're kind of expecting that now down here. But it goes on, right? That's where the surprise is where the note starts, right? Then you can live in it. And then you have space for that crescendo, right? Instead of doing it into that, which I think kind of gives it away. Let's do it now. Different from right. Not only is it not mezzo forte, but the harmonies. Like, can you just play the fifth bar? Sorry. That, and now can you play the chord? The chord on measure 12. It's like, oh man, so warm and squishy and sweet. really try not to have a similar sound on that mezzo piano that you did at the mezzo forte. And based on how you're playing it, I really like the color you're choosing in the opening. It kind of forces you to be more deep into the string with mezzo forte. So then at the mezzo piano, I would say try having a more, I guess, more air and spin in the sound. Like the sound is like a really squishy comforter or something. Let's just go right. Actually, I want you to try that thing. Can you play bar 5? Play the first few notes, and then we'll jump. Now to 12. So the first forte you have in the whole piece is that, or in the whole movement rather. That's the first time you have. Oh no, I guess that forte in the material of the lyrical material. That's the first time you have that in a forte, right? So that comes straight from that really squishy mezzo piano that you played, which is such a huge difference from having 3 bars in mezzo forte, 3 bars mezzo piano, 4 bars mezzo forte, and then you have mezzo piano to forte, and it's that same theme. Oh, and okay, actually I want you to start from, just right where we stopped, at measure 18 is the pianissimo. To me feels kind of normal sound-wise, and this is the first time we have those 3 notes in a different rhythm. It's really interesting, right? Because you have it's always been these 3/4 note pickups. Even here, it's always been 3/4 note pickups into each phrase. And this time you have you have 3 half note pickups. There's something really ominous about that. Even before we feel the stringendo happening, it's like something is drastically different here.
About 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. C20, 1, 2. Why don't we just start right at 23 and think about the relationship between because we kind of, based on the opening, and based on that experience we've already had, we kind of think maybe what's happening here is right, something like that will happen. But not only is it down, it's also twice as slow. Okay, let's do that from 23. not, we're doing that. It was like distinctly less and kind of dark. It can be done. You can do it. Because then you have way more power there. Or another thing you could try is just to be as loud as you possibly can on those two notes. Actually, another thing, psychologically, first of all, I know you can do it. Secondly, you're all alone, she doesn't move there. So you can literally listen to your hand hit that note and then play. I'm gonna try. Just from here.